Get ready before life happens. The podcast helping you navigate life's what ifs.
In today's world, you can earn a strong income and still not feel financially ready, especially in some industries that were not built with you in mind. Today, I'm joined by Sandra Park, founder of Prosperous Panda. Sandra, welcome to Get Ready Before Life Happens.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm so glad we got acquainted through LinkedIn. And I've listened to some of your podcast episodes. I'm really excited to be on.
Oh, cool. Well, I hope you like them because you're here today, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I love your podcast as well, which we'll get to later. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your origin story and how did it lead you to focus on helping women in STEM build financial confidence?
Yes. I'm a trained engineer. I went to school for electrical engineering, and I've been in that industry working professionally for a little over 20 years. Which is crazy because that's what I picked when I was 18 years old. I went to college for that, and I've been working in that industry and profession for over 2 decades now. And of course, STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So it's all those fields, basically anything that's not the arts. But now there's STEAM, which includes STEAM,
Oh,
includes
yeah.
the arts, which kind of includes everybody. But yeah, it's kind of the high tech and technical fields, IT, cybersecurity, data analysts, engineering, kind of all the nerdy technical jobs. And I had been doing that for over 10 years. And I kind of had my low point where I realized I was making a lot of money. I was actually making over 6 figures. And I still didn't have any money for myself. Like I was literally spending it and waiting on the next paycheck. And I got paid weekly too. I got paid every single week, every single Friday. But I had this aha moment when I had done my tax return and realized this is how much money I make, and I don't really have any of it left for me. And there's nothing to show for all this work I was doing. I was working a whole lot during that early part of my career. Of course, I was really gung ho, climbing the corporate ladder, getting promotions and raises. And I guess I always thought that I would get to a certain point in my career where I'd make enough money where I wouldn't have money problems anymore. But I realized, well, I'm at the point where I'm making over 100K a year and I still don't have any money and I still don't know how to manage my money for myself. So that's when I started learning a lot more about money management and investing and kind of just not outsourcing it to everyone else, kind of empowering myself to learn as much as I could so I could handle my own money.
I think that's, I'm just making notes, is that empowering yourself is, I think, the most important is, yeah, I mean, you there's definitely a role for advisors and planners, but that it does start with yourself.
Yes.
And so that's very powerful because as you said, is even though you make more money, is usually our lifestyles adjust to that additional money and we don't have money left over. So, was there an aha moment when you go, okay, I need to take control and I need to get the power for myself?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was one year doing my taxes and just seeing on paper, because you can get a weekly paycheck. You can get a weekly, bi-weekly paycheck, but it's not until you do your yearly tax return you see how much it adds up to. And then I think the other huge kind of moment or series of events was I was leaving the company that I had worked at since I had graduated from college. So if you think about it, that's over a decade. That's the early young part of my engineer career where you're just very shaped by, where you work at and who you work with. And I worked at a very big company and leaving that company and for once going without a weekly paycheck was really scary for me. So it wasn't even so much of a situation. I think a lot of people's aha moment is they're drastically in debt And that's what causes them. I think my situation scared me because I was actually about to come into quite a bit of money, but I also at that same time was going to stop working for a while and not collect that weekly paycheck. And just thinking about I'm going to have so much money in the bank account, and but I've never really learned how to manage it. Because when you don't make very much money or you're spending it every single week, there's nothing to manage. You're just
Mhm.
managing it by there's a new paycheck coming and now there's more money to spend. So I was like, oh, if I want to actually take this time off from work, I have to figure out how much I can live off of and how I can take care of my expenses for a while.
Yeah, I think that's something people don't think about is especially when you come out of college or high school
Hmm.
is, managing expenses. I got into a little bit of trouble with credit cards when I first started out, got a
Mm.
credit card my senior year in college and, kind of enjoyed all the things that the credit card brought without really thinking through the long-term consequences. And that's so easy to do, especially, when you're young and you're not thinking long term.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've had credit cards too. Luckily, it didn't get that bad. I don't think I ever got to where I ever had over 20K balance, but of course, on when you're making a lot less money, 20K is still a lot. But yeah, you're totally right. And it's not even like these big notable expenses, right? Or big emergencies. It's just a lot of little things adding up where you're like, I can buy this now.
Exactly. Yeah, and credit cards, come with less friction, so it's easy to spend, and you're not seeing, so let's say you buy something today, you're going to see your credit card bill next month, and then you have to pay it 2 weeks after that. So there's not
Yeah,
that immediate connection with the purchase you make today, and especially some of the purchases are so easy. You go to Amazon, buy with one click, and then
yeah.
it's here in an hour or whatever. Yeah, which is incredible, but that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
So, one of the things is, identity plays a big role in this. Is how do, and you talked about your identity starting out, is how does our identity impact our financial readiness?
Oh, no, it absolutely does. Because when I actually look back on it, when I was in college and I was only making maybe 10K a year at most, this is like, the typical college student type of jobs. The irony was I didn't have financial problems. I had no debt because, like I said, I didn't have a whole lot of money, but you have to actually manage every single penny when you don't make a lot. And of course, when you're lower income, your option is usually the Walmart option for everything. You're either going without or you're buying the cheapest version of something, right? But you're carefully planning out everything from Cinnabon purchases to that Walmart run, where you're getting your groceries, how you're going to eat out. And then when I got my first job out of college, and I'm a professional and I made it, and I'm working at this global, well-known aerospace company that's really large. I saw like me, myself, and like a lot of my friends and from college, we all like upgraded our lifestyles, right? Everyone bought their
Hmm.
first brand new car, or they bought a big house, or they bought a boat, and a lot of the keeping up with the Joneses. And it's kind of funny that when you feel like, oh, I should be spending this much. I am in the upper echelon. Now I've made it. I've got the, for lack of a better term, like big boy, big girl job. I need to act like
Yeah.
it. And yeah, that identity from poor college student to working professional. Yeah, and comparing myself to a lot of the colleagues and coworkers and keeping up with them was really pretty detrimental. And I also think what's interesting is when you make more money, the irony is you have more choices, right? So now it's not like the Walmart option. I could, oh, maybe I could get the Target version, or maybe I could go to Macy's, but see, now life is more confusing, right? And do you always need the better option? And I think that's another thing that really kind of I got into the trap of where I was, especially for electronics. I loved electronics, so I was the type of person like I would upgrade everything just because there was a new version every single year. So like the new phone would come out and I had to get the new phone. But do you really need a new phone every year, right? Or if the phone's not paid off, should you be getting a new phone? So things like that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard, is like you said, and I think like maybe, just to pick on Instagram for a minute, is, you
Oh
see
yeah.
the best moments of somebody's life and you go, wow, they're on vacation in wherever, and you're like, maybe we should go there. And it's like, I think that also throws you off, is like you said, is because you're keeping up with everybody else, but you're only seeing glimpses of their life. Is, like you said, maybe they've bought a big house, but at the same time they've also bought a big mortgage, they have property taxes, they have insurance, they have all kinds of things that go along with that big house that you don't see, and that can
Oh
make it
yeah.
challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the Facebook days and where you can easily compare yourself to other people where they're going on these fancy vacations, eating these nice meals, buying a lot of things. So, yeah, I feel like the early part of my career, a lot of my colleagues and friends, everyone was just buying all the stuff. The other thing is Fort Worth, the major city that I live nearby where I worked at, I think the median family income back then was like 70K or something. It wasn't very much. So the thing was like almost right out of college, you're way up there for like even like a family of four in the area. So the amount of disposable income you have, right, is crazy. So yeah.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to somebody who's early in their career, to avoid that lifestyle creep? Any words for them?
Oh, I mean, definitely. I wish I budgeted much earlier. I wish I knew where my money was going. Um, I wish that I was more consistently investing back then. I had the typical excuse that a lot of people do when they're young is I would say, I don't have any money left to invest anything. Like it would be nice, but there's no money left where I can actually invest. Um, yeah, and also just not being so influenced. So, I mean, I've spent years where I've not been on Facebook or other social media. Not that it's all bad and evil for everyone, but I know for me, like, I just feel more depressed when I get on there. I can't not compare myself to others. So, like, kind of like knowing yourself, right? Because I believe it could be healthy for other people. But like you're saying, you don't know people's backstory. You don't know sometimes how much debt they took on to buy some of these things. You don't really know if it's genuinely making people happy. So just also kind of like, yeah, you have to know yourself better, which is hard in your 20s because that's what people don't know. So they're kind of letting the whole world and social media and everybody around them shape them.
Well, and then I think it just would come back to your own goals. Then if knowing yourself is knowing what you want to achieve, and I think that's hard when you're young, is, knowing what that is
Yeah.
because you're still learning. So that's hard when you're starting out. But that's another reason, I guess, when you're starting out, is that you don't spend all the money you take in and you put some money aside. I know that's hard when you're
Yeah.
25 years old and you're making money to put some aside, but it's important.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that you talk about is, you work with women in STEM. What keeps women in STEM from fully owning their value?
Oh man, that is a really good question. There's so many things. Oh, I mean, first of all, we're in a very male dominated field. I'm not going to blame it totally on that, right? But there are systemic issues, right? Where women are still underpaid. Sometimes I think our contributions at work are undervalued. If you've ever heard the term, like, women are often called the glue of the team or the mother, right? Oh, kind of like we fill in these, that's kind of the implication. We fill in these other places, right? We're kind of like,
Uh,
can be the soft, nurturing people, but are we seen as like leadership material? Are you seen as someone who can actually execute and get work done? And it's not always one or the other. There are people who can combine those skills. I mean, I agree there's some that maybe, but it's not really a gender thing, right? Where, and those contributions are just as valuable too. I think women not understanding their worth, right, and advocating for themselves, the same way like a man will advocate for himself at work, he will push for certain promotions he wants, he lets his boss know, like, I'm angling for this. That's like just as crucial, right? Where you're setting expectations with your leadership and your management, you're tooting your own horn, you're making sure that people value your contributions just as much. So yeah, I wish people would really take it more seriously, because it's like, I call it like, this is your life energy, right? You're going outside of the work, your home, into the workplace, and that time should be valued, right? You're spending it away from your family. There's mental stress and energy. It's a lot to keep up in a demanding profession. So yeah, that should be valued.
Yeah, I like that. Your time should be valued. And I want to walk back to what you talk about is advocating for yourself and understanding your worth, is because women are oftentimes still paid less than men. I mean, overall, women
Yes.
are still paid less than men. In some jobs, I think they've caught up, but I think for the majority of jobs, they haven't. So, for a woman, how do you start to advocate for yourself if you're feeling like, this is a male dominated team? What do I do?
I think one of the best thing is if they can find another female ally on the team and they kind of help each other out. Because you watch, men will do it for each other at work. It's so funny and interesting because you'll see them even advocate for some other guy that you barely see them speaking to. You're like, are they friends? Have they ever worked together? All of a sudden, he's sticking up for him. So I always thought, like, why do women not do that more? Because I see men do it all the time. And I think women have more of this, like, well, if we were friends or went to, I mean, I see men do it for men they barely know. So I really wish we would stick together and advocate for each other more at work. And like I said, it's having that communication also with your leadership and setting expectations. I also think women are way too demure and kind of like passive about, well, they'll intuit that that's something I want to grow into, or that's something I would like to do. Why not say that, and yeah, you could do it in a very cocky, non-arrogant way. Like, I would like to grow into that type of position in the next year or two, or these are my goals. And I think that's also where men will excel at that in the workplace, where they can, be very open about, this is what I'm expecting. I want to be manager in 5 years. I want to be a team lead in 2 years. I want to grow into this. So I think women also just being more direct about that, because they definitely do have dreams and goals. They just keep them very secretive, and they tell each other, and they don't tell anyone else at work that can actually have any influence over their career. And the other last thing I think is, if women were more open about talking about money and salaries, I think men, or maybe you can tell me if they more openly talk about it. I believe they do. I think they will have more frank discussions about who's making what and what type of raises they're getting. So some of that lack of transparency is hurting us, because I think a lot of women, they just don't know, and they're scared to ask, and it's not a common subject of discussion with each other.
Yeah, it is. I think, going back to what you were saying about men stating their goals, is I think men are very confident about,
Yes.
or overconfident about their skills, and and overestimating what they can accomplish and what they think they're owed, where women tend to, yeah, not be as cocky, I think is probably the better word.
Okay, you said it, not me, so I feel
Yeah.
okay with it. Okay.
Yeah, I said it. I'll own it. Men,
Okay.
men can be definitely overconfident, which, yeah, is cocky sometimes. And, at the same time, women don't
Yeah, they'll
usually
kind of
have
like,
that same
yeah.
cockiness.
Yeah, they might like work really hard and think, oh, if I get noticed, I might get invited on this trip, but what about just saying, like, I would like to go on that business trip where, there's going to be a presentation to the customer. I would like to be part of that, you know? So, yeah, yeah, I absolutely think that's true, where women are just kind of like, um, I'm sure, like, maybe your wife, or you've dealt with this with other people, where they think like, they're like intuiting,
Yeah.
and they do the same thing
Oh,
at work.
yeah.
Yeah, actually, I had a colleague that wanted to go on a business trip, and yeah, this exact example we're talking about, and she wasn't very open about it. She's like, "Well, I kind of said I would like to go sometime." It's like, it's not going to happen if you don't kind of state you would like to go on a trip.
So I'm just making a note. So, to be clear when you want something, and I think that can be really hard is to do
Yes.
that, is it takes courage and it takes confidence. Is, how can women start to build up that confidence where they're going to ask for something instead of saying, well, I don't want to be shot down, or I'm not comfortable doing this, especially, if they're in a male dominated environment.
Oh, I just sometimes think, well, what is the worst that could happen? Or I've also had friends sometimes regret not negotiating their salary more. And what I will pose to them, I'll say, well, if you stay quiet and you don't ask for what you really want, don't you think you'll be unhappy like 6 months or a year from now? Right? So is it
Mhm.
not worth the discomfort of that 5 minute discussion where you're like, no, actually, I would like to get paid this, right? And you can back it up with some reasoning, right? It doesn't have to be that direct, but where you're making it very open, this is the number I'm looking for. This is more what I was looking for, right? And is it not worth it so you don't build up this resentment and all that? But yeah, just sometimes with career stuff, I always think, what is the worst that could happen? So what if you ask to be included on a business trip with the customer and then your boss says no or next time? I mean, even worst case, they kind of know you want to go on a business trip one day in the future. You're kind of aiming for that just because you asked. So I think just having more support from other women, kind of thinking through the worst case scenarios. I just hate living with regret and resentment. I don't know, maybe that's just me. I think you can always do that thought exercise, like, what if I don't do this? What if I don't ask? Then you kind of sit there all miserable and regretting it or wondering what could have happened if maybe you did ask.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think, it comes back to is thinking what's the worst that could happen. And that's so easy, not only just in, asking about a raise or going to a meeting, is just in life. So often we think about like, oh my gosh, this thing's going to happen.
Yeah,
And usually the worst thing is not going to happen.
yeah.
It's pretty rare that the worst thing you can imagine
The worst
happening
outcome is in your
happens.
own head. Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty rare that it happens. Like, maybe it happens, but usually it's like when you've thought about like, oh boy, I've got to break this news to somebody, and you think it's going to be the worst thing, or so and so is thinking this about me, and then that's not the case at all. Is
No,
it's all
no,
in your
and like
head.
yeah, yeah, and like I was saying, like worst case, like you wouldn't get fired, but now you planted a little seed in your boss's head that, oh, she's interested in going on a business trip when we go meet the customer. I didn't know that. Sometimes management or your leadership doesn't even know what you're interested in because you're so, trying to be so stoic and not communicate anything at work. So the squeaky wheel gets the grease sometimes, and it just another thing I was thinking of, just recently, I did this story on LinkedIn where I talked about negotiating my phone bill, and I got $4 less a month. It's not really the point of I saved all this
Hmm.
money and this and that, but I was talking about how it's a good exercise to sometimes ask for something, right? And the first thing when I brought up, could I get this deal that I see online, they said, well, that's for the new customers and you're not a new customer. And they kind of gave some nonsensical reasoning. They're like, well, you have a family plan, you have multiple lines, and that's for one line. Like, could you not do that with like multiple lines? They're like, well, yes. You see what I'm saying? I'm not trying to argue with them. I'm just poking a hole in their logic. And then I kind of said, well, I'm going to have to push back. I don't agree with you can't give a better deal just because I'm not a new customer. I guess I'm going to have to reevaluate if I want to keep phone service with you guys. And then she said, now I have something to go back to my supervisor with. So I realized, like, just kind of like if I got angry or upset, or if I just accepted her first no, it would have ended right there. But because I gave her something where she could go back to her supervisor, I ended up getting that discount. And I was just making a joke, like I could buy a Starbucks coffee now. I mean, $4 is not
Yeah.
like game changing, life changing. It's not like millionaire stuff. Because sometimes I see people talk about, I'm conscious of my money, but then people are like, well, if you're wealthy, why do you care? It's like it's really not about that. I think it's also the exercise of where you're asking for things you want. Like I said, negotiating is a muscle, it's an exercise. So even like in the little things where maybe you negotiate, your internet bill down a little bit or something with a different service provider, it's a good exercise. So when these big things come up, like at work, where for promotions, raises, different opportunities, you're more prepared. You're not like going to get so dejected. You don't, you know, your whole world isn't going to fall apart if this thing doesn't happen for you. So I also encourage people to do more of that. And it's not like about being cheap and you're running around everywhere asking for discounts or free things, but it doesn't hurt every once in a while to just, is that the best you can do? Is there a better price on that? Do you have another deal or option? I saw this on the website.
Yeah, that's great advice. Is it never hurts to say, to ask the question. Is like, can you do this? And they talk
Yes.
about that. I mean, I have never had a airline upgrade, but with hotel rooms, it's kind of like, that kind of stuff happens if, like with hotels, if they have the inventory and you ask really nicely, like, hey, do you have any other rooms available? And you know, if you're celebrating something is, it never hurts to ask.
Yeah.
All they can do is say no.
Yeah, and you made a really good point. It's hard to be mad at a question rather than like, assumption or demand. Like, you're going to give me an upgrade. Or you'd be like, do you have any rooms you could upgrade? You know what I'm saying? You never know
Yeah.
until you ask. So yeah, I like that too, where if you do it in this inquisitive way, and I do a similar thing at work too, because you can challenge, you can ask things, and it's just a question, but when you kind of go around demanding it, then it's different.
Yeah, well, it even gets back to the advice that you were saying about going to the meeting is you don't say, I am going to go to a meeting. You're like, hey, would it be possible for me to go to the meeting? I think it would be a great learning experience and I could really hopefully contribute something to the meeting. Then it's like what you're talking about with a customer service rep. Your boss has something that's beneficial for your boss too. Your boss is like, oh, now I can give Sandra a new learning experience. And Sandra's got some really good ideas. She does good work. I never thought about having her in this meeting before. Because remember, your boss is pretty busy too. And they're thinking about their own work as much as,
Oh yeah.
their employees' work. I mean, so, that's the other thing for me too, is I think that you have to realize too that it's a two-way street and you have to figure out. I've never been a woman, so I can't say what it's like, and I know it's a lot harder for women. But that for me, what I learned in sales and negotiating is you also have to think about what the other person wants, and how can you
Yes.
make their life better. And so, is even if you're asking for a salary increase, is there are ways to frame it where it's benefiting the business as much as it's benefiting you. And if you give the boss a win at the same time, it's a lot easier for them to say yes to you. And but
Absolutely. Yeah.
so just like negotiate, and that's what you said is it's great practice to negotiate a $4 phone bill. Is yeah, it's not the money, it's the principle,
Yeah.
and
And it's
it's a
not
good
about being
habit.
cheap or anything, but it's sometimes about pushing back, kind of like also sometimes people just come at you with all these words and you're like, oh, well, they had a response. But sometimes when you're like, wait, that didn't make any sense. I'm just going to
Yeah,
challenge that. And you don't have to scream at people or be angry. It's like, but you won't do it for this. And it's like, oh, interesting, And it's just, yeah. I also think it teaches you about how to react less to things because now you're being more calm and rational and processing and you're kind of figuring out how to deal with it. So, yeah, it's the same like, at work, you can be very upset you're not getting what you want. But if you haven't communicated that, if you haven't tried to work on that, yeah, like you're saying, your bosses are busy too. They're not reading your minds. They're not like, oh, well, Tony would really like a raise over there. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, they're worried about their own raise.
Yeah.
That's what's on their
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We often think that people are thinking a lot about us when they're really thinking a lot about themselves. So,
That's so true. Yeah.
that's a big part of it. So, and I think that gets back to what you were saying is about men are much more straightforward. Like, hey, it'd be great if I got a raise this year. Like, wouldn't it be cool? And,
Yeah.
and maybe you don't have to be quite that overboard, but
Yeah, but borrow a little bit of that. Yeah, yeah, I
yeah,
totally
yeah,
agree.
there's somewhere in the middle, that I
Yeah,
think
because
works.
it's so funny sometimes when I'll hear about men's stories sometimes, and the way they negotiate is like, I want this, and I was like, sentence ends, right? And I'm always thinking like, oh, like I would say, I want this, but blah 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 blah. I'm still grateful for that, and this is why, and I can add value here. But yeah, some people are just they're that resolute where they're like, I want this, and they don't justify or back it up. But it's not that you have to go into this long soliloquy over explaining, but it's like, yeah, give your boss, like you're talking about, you're trying to be aware of they need to probably get that approval from someone else. They need a little bit of a story or a reason or something to go to their boss with.
Yeah, in sales, the first thing I learned is whiffs. What's in it for me?
Oh,
Yeah, from
yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing is so, when you're asking for something is, at the same time, yeah, if your boss is giving you a raise, there's really not much in it for them. But you could say, hey, like this will, I've been here a long time and, you know, paint whatever story you can paint with it.
Hmm.
I've done a great job. It keeps me motivated. Maybe I've had some other job offers, you know, something like that is like, you don't want to be just like in your face, like I'm going to resign if you don't give me a raise,
Yeah.
but it doesn't hurt to hint around that there's other opportunities for you out there.
Yeah.
And that's something that your boss can say, oh, well, maybe we're not paying them market value or whatever. It's been a year and a half since they got a raise because some companies give raises on a regular basis and some don't. And
Hmm.
usually small businesses especially don't because they're a small business and they don't have a system set up for that. So Sandra, before we wrap up, I want to make sure I ask you about maximizing your one thing, which is something you talk about. How does focusing on your strengths increase your earning power and long-term readiness?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm totally all about that because I believe, I'm a women in STEM and I serve other women in STEM. And just the reality is, a lot of us are W-2 employees. And I think there's nothing wrong with that because I feel like there's a lot of things in social media and now on the internet where being self-employed, being a business owner is very glamorized. But one strength we do have is our high income earning power, especially while we're employed. I'm not saying it's the most stable of any job. We have a lot of woes, just like other industries. But to maximize, we have this incredible brain power. We went to really good schools to get these degrees and all that. So why not make that income work for you, right? And I'm not against people, starting businesses or doing stuff on the side, but maximize investing, managing your money as smart as you can while you have it. And just the reality is with a lot of tech and engineering careers, in the beginning, like your salary is kind of exponential. It goes up a lot. And then it'll kind of
Hmm.
slow down and plateau. And then honestly, just for some people, they may not work as long as they wanted to, right? So maximizing this career that's making a lot of money for you, but actually keeping as much money as you can and building this good foundation and then hopefully investing it where the returns can grow more than your yearly salary. And I think that's real freedom because you've seen it now with all these layoffs. Oracle just laid off like 30,000 people, like in one day. They laid off 18% of their workforce, the largest software company in the world, with like no notice. And that's true stability and freedom where you have money in the bank and hey, I might be in a job search for 6 to 12 months and I'm not going to sweat it and I'm not desperate and I'm not going to take the first offer just because, I'm about to run out of money. So that's what I really wish for like my target audience of people, that they use their salaries so they can build this freedom where if their job went away, they'd be totally fine. They can pick where they want to work. They don't have to go to a job that maybe they think is soul sucking, but unfortunately pays them much more. They can be more picky and selective, because I think that's also the other brilliance of gaining a lot more experience and tenure in our industry and field is ideally the options should open up, but kind of sadly, as you get into those higher salary bands, kind of the options kind of narrow down, right? And I find some people are like, well, I'll do this, boring documentation process job that, I hate, or I have to move to North Carolina, not making fun of North Carolina, but like I have to do this cross country move all of a sudden because that's where the job is. And I just want people to think about, what if you actually had this money where you can kind of be the owner of your own life, right? You're kind of calling the shots a little more. You could be like, no, I'm not going to take a job that's across the country. I'm going to hold out for a remote position. Or no, this job that's developing some boring process, been there, done that. I want to move on to something else. I want to do something different or more creative.
That's cool. Well, I love what you said, is own your own life, is, that's really in what you said about building your freedom. That's what money can buy, is money can buy your freedom of
Yes.
choices and options. So to wrap up, Sandra, I have what I call the Get Ready Hot Take Trio, and these are three quick questions I ask all my guests. The first one is, what's one money myth you're trying to break?
Oh, let me see. I don't know. I feel like there's so many of them.
Do a whole episode on money myths.
That it's hard to invest. I'll say that one. Yeah.
So anybody can invest.
Yeah. I think I highly encourage anyone, everyone, start. You even learn a lot from losing money, and you have to be okay with losing some money in investing. I always tell people the only way I learned is I learned the really hard way by losing lots of money in the beginning. But no matter what you learn, right? And you get your start somewhere. And yeah, so that anybody can invest and it's not that hard.
Yeah, and especially for women who oftentimes feel like they can invest, is there is a group, Invest for Better, which people have heard me talk about a lot on the show. And I did do an episode with Janine Firpo, the founder of Invest for Better, which some people may remember. And they do investing circles for women. So I will make sure I put that in the show notes. So if you're a woman and you want to join an investing circle, it's a great way to do it with Invest for Better. So, in a show, I have no relationship with Invest for Better, just that I'm a big fan of the
Okay.
work that they do.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah. So, the next question is, we're going to bring up the time machine for a minute. If you could go back in time, knowing what you know now about money, what advice would you give your younger self, that 20, 25-year-old?
Oh, I think the biggest piece of advice is you can learn it yourself. When I talk about that outsourcing of financial knowledge, it was through like, male coworkers. I would listen to their financial advice. People that I was dating, anyone who has experience with like, their family giving them financial advice. I have an older brother, I have a dad, right? So it's very easy to outsource it. And I'm not saying it's always to males, but it's other adult figures in your life around you where like, well, they know and they're smart and they can tell me. And I think you have to have this mindset shift where like, I can figure it out. I can learn about this. I have to empower myself. This is my money. Like I can't depend on other people to care about it more than I care about it.
I love that because, well, and that gets back to the whole male female thing, is that, men tend to be more overconfident when it comes to investing. Women are actually better investors, studies show, because of that overconfidence. So you have to be careful about the source of learning about money.
Oh,
And
you're so
that goes,
right.
there are some women who don't know what they're talking about either. So I'm not just picking on men. We'll just say all people
No,
sometimes
but you're
can
right.
tend
It could
to.
be so easy to be intimidated. And that's what I would listen to because, like I said, I worked in male dominated workplaces. So you listen to men so easily talking about money and investments and stock market returns. And now when I look back on it, I'm like, yeah, they didn't know what they're talking about. But you don't know any better. When
Yeah.
you don't know yourself, you can feel easily intimidated, like, well, they know so much more than me. And they're like checking Yahoo Finance and they're like day trading and they're like, picking up all the meme stocks and things like that. So yeah, it felt like a lot of people knew more than me, but you're right. They might not, but if you don't get any education yourself, it can just feel very intimidating where you think everyone knows more than you and they're so financially savvy. But I wasn't looking at their portfolios. I don't know how well they're doing.
Yeah. And here's the thing to think about investing is, you should learn, you should, you know, not go beyond your knowledge level because there are people out there who that's their whole job is to invest all day.
Yes.
That's all they do. They go to school, they have access to the best resources and tools. And so you are competing, sort of competing against them when you're investing. So you have to have a strategy, you have to know what you're doing. That doesn't mean anybody can be an investor. It just means that you have to invest smart and be careful with
Yeah.
your investing. So.
No, I agree absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And then kind of I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but I definitely felt like there was a time when I also was into the hype of like deluding myself, like I could be like an expert investor, and realizing over time, like, no, no. And just because you have a Robinhood app or Betterment or something or anything, no. And like you were saying, unless you have all that time and energy to devote to that, you're just not going to be that good at so much. I just think of all the mental energy and time I wasted, like trying to time or figure out things or overreacting to market events. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Don't overreact to market events. Just get a strategy, maybe, join an investing club or, get a good investing newsletter, whatever, source of information you rely on, have a financial planner set up your,
Hmm.
investment strategy. You can do a one-time engagement with a financial planner to get your course set and then go from there. So, to Sandra, to wrap up, what's your number one tip to change the way we think about money?
Oh, I think one of I've experienced this myself recently. Um, I hate to say like I'm too cheap, but like to not have a scarcity mindset all the time. I think that's my biggest problem that I grew up with. And it's so funny because even now, when I'm doing really, really well financially, I still will be like trying to get stuff on deals. And I'm thinking, why did I buy that? Or why did I do this? And kind of rewiring myself where it's like, no, money's a tool. Money will come and go, money will ebb and flow. But that it's just to not like kind of like hoard it, and I want to actually enjoy more of it. I know that's not great advice for like everybody, but I'm getting to the point where it's kind of like saving that amount of money is like piddly to me. So I actually need to start being a little more generous. I want to go on more vacations that I want to go on. I don't want to go on something just because it's a deal on Travelzoo. It's like I want to go somewhere because I want to go there, right? And even if it costs more. So that's the biggest mindset shift I'm facing right now. I do think a lot of high earning women get like that too, where sometimes they'll think like, oh, well, I'll get the Netflix with the ads instead of without. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's like, I don't know, $3 or $6. Like, it's okay. You make 150K
Yeah.
a year. Like, yeah, if you don't want to watch commercials or ads, it's okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. And that's a really good point. It's, are you looking at the small wins or the big wins?
Yes,
Yeah.
and I used to focus on that because, honestly, when you are at a different income level, you need to focus on everything, right? Every dollar, every penny. But now I'm kind of like, No, if I want to have a Spotify subscription, I'm going to have a Spotify subscription. Or if I want to do the Netflix with no ads, or if I want to do like, front of the line, tickets at a museum, or if I want like more like the VIP tickets when I go to an event. So trying to remember that, the things that I enjoy and I want to spend money on, they're not going to bankrupt me. I'm not going to run out of money. It's okay to actually enjoy and spend some of my money on the things I want.
Yeah, it's okay to enjoy and spend money on the things you want.
Yeah.
I got to write that down.
I don't know if that's the most eloquent, but yeah. So that's what I have to keep reminding myself.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful advice. So, Sandra, where can people learn more about you, Prosperous Panda, and tune into the Engineer Her Path podcast?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I have a podcast too. I do conversations sometimes, but I do solo episodes. It's called Engineer Her Path. It's everywhere. You can find it. And then for social media, really these days, I mostly just hang out on LinkedIn, but I read my messages all the time if you want to reach out to me in any way. And besides that, I also post some content on there. And I have a newsletter. If you want to join that, that's free too. So.
Cool, cool. And for everybody watching and listening, there'll be links to Sandra's website, her social media profiles, and the Engineer Her Path podcast in the show notes. That could be a tongue twister there. So, Sandra, thanks for joining us on Get Ready Before Life Happens.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you everyone as always for tuning in to this episode of Get Ready Before Life Happens. If you learned something today to change the way you think about money, please be sure to subscribe and to share with a friend. If you want to support the Get Ready movement, you can now do so at buymeacoffee.com/Tony Stewart, and you can join my newsletter at tonystewart.com. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.